going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Sam Shapiro back here with more of your Heat latest on FanArc. Sorry I was absent yesterday. Was feeling a little bit under the weather, but we're back here to bring you some more news heading into this weekend. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of today, don't forget to drop a like on this video. And of course, subscribe to our channel for great daily content, all pertaining to your Miami Heat right here Monday through Friday. Well, I got a little bit of an injury report for you going into this last preseason game today against the Memphis Grizzlies. And while the lineup hasn't necessarily been announced yet, it was announced yesterday at practice that Kasparas Jakučonas and Tyler Herro were the only two players that were really out. Everybody else was back and active at practice, that including Bam Adebayo, Nikola Jovic, and Terry Rozier amid their kind of injuries going on. And I think seeing Bam at practice was the biggest thing. That was tweeted by Brady Hawk earlier Thursday. And again, this is just a very positive thing to see. I know we were kind of talking about the hypotheticals of could maybe some of these situations be potential things that Miami would have to worry about in the long term. And, you know, it really just seemed like Miami was just taking some precautions with a lot of these injuries. And the fact that Bam Adebayo, it's pretty much confirmed that he's hopefully not going to be missing significant time, at least to start the regular season, is a great thing, because obviously going down in that third quarter against the Atlanta Hawks earlier this week was a very scary sight to see, especially with Tyler Herro still out and then Jakučonas dealing with hip soreness. You can't, at this point, Miami really cannot afford to have Bam Adebayo go down. So seeing that he was at least at practice, being a participant in going through the motions of hopefully getting ready for the regular season, I really hope that he doesn't suit up for this game against Memphis tonight. But in the grand scheme of things, it's good to know that he's at least okay. He's participating in practice right now, or at least was a participant in Thursday's practice, and hopefully is going to be available and ready to go for the beginning of the regular season, along with Jovic and Rozier, who, going over to Rozier, definitely had some question marks, kind of looking at least into the beginning of training camp. And now with Herro being out for an extended period of time, at least that's what the initial reports were saying, definitely raised a little bit of concern, looking that he might be able to potentially step up in some sort of starting point guard role going into the beginning of this regular season based on how the roster is kind of looking. But to see these guys back, as well as Jovic, you know, a guy that Miami is definitely high and mighty on going into this season right now, especially being one of those players that's going to be focal and pushing the pace for a Miami team that's trying to play faster. Seeing those three, especially back at practice, is a really positive thing to see. And I'm hoping that they can at least stay healthy and be, you know, like this report kind of suggests, be ready to go for the regular season when that tips off against the Orlando Magic. But now moving over to another player that I had kind of just mentioned, at least in this block, Tyler Herro. I thought it was very interesting to hear over the broadcast of this past game with the Atlanta Hawks in the preseason that I believe it was Dominique Wilkins who said it. I'm pretty sure that one of the at least it was said over the broadcast that they expected Tyler Herro to be ready to suit up for the beginning of the regular season. And I thought this was a bit of a hot take, no pun intended, just because we'd been talking about Tyler Herro being out, at least in the initial reports, until at least right around or right before Thanksgiving. Him telling Coach Spoelstra it'd be a little bit earlier than that, maybe potentially being towards the beginning of November. But now we're hearing over the broadcast, at least from the game earlier this week on Monday, that he could potentially be coming back for the tip-off of the regular season. I mean, I don't want to get any fans' hopes up, because quite honestly, I don't think this is the case. But for all we know, maybe his recovery could be on a bit of a faster trajectory than we expected. I know he initially told Coach Spoelstra 6 weeks, and given the first tip-off against the Magic on the 22nd, the timeline of that kind of looks about 6 weeks from when the injury was initially reported back in September, I believe. So, I mean, that timeline kind of sort of checks out a little bit, but I still don't see Tyler Herro being ready to go for the beginning of the regular season, at least in that first game against the Magic. And I would also kind of caution against it. I'd rather have Tyler Herro sit out the first 2 or 3 games, even if he is feeling like he could come back early and he kind of wants to push that, maybe get back for the first game in November, I believe against the Lakers. I wouldn't even try to push that, just because I'd rather have him healthy for 65 to 70 games than have him rush in so he could try to play 82 and then find out in December or January that his ankle or his foot is bothering him again, and then he's got to sit out he's got to sit out more games that kind of mean more down the line, some of those play-in games or the NBA Cup games. And quite honestly, I would rather have Tyler be healthier for games later down the road than see him come out guns blazing and then him potentially wear and tear that injury even more and then potentially risk him being available later in the year when he's obviously going to be needed more, at least the firepower on offense. So could he be ready for the regular? Could he be ready for the start of the regular season? I don't think it's completely out of the question at this point, but given how the reports have kind of been suggested, at least at the initial point in time, I thought this was definitely a hot take, and I think things are definitely trending to no, he won't be ready for the start of the season. I hope he doesn't if he feels though he is, because I'd rather have him kind of ease back into the rotation instead of rushing back and trying to help at least Miami get in the win column. I definitely think a lot of these games too are necessarily going to be tougher matchups and might not necessarily make a difference if Harrow is in these games, but we'll kind of just have to see how the team meshes, especially given how the preseason has kind of gone so far and how Miami's been plug and playing in a variety of different pieces. But drop in the comments if you think this take on the Atlanta Hawks broadcast game earlier this week was a bit of a hot take or not, because I definitely think it was, and I don't think Harrow will be ready, at least for the first 5 or 6 games to start off the regular season so far. But now moving over to another roster move that Miami has made this week involving another Exhibition 10 player. Miami deciding to waive Gabe Madsen and sign Steve Settle to an Exhibition 10 contract. And this is interesting because initially this guy, the forward, a 6'10 forward out of Temple, shot 11 points per game off roughly 44% from the field, also adding 5 rebounds. Definitely one of those lengthy forward type players that Miami likes to tend to go for. High release point, can move pretty well in the grand scheme of things considering his size, but in the summer league did not really show a whole lot for Miami in the grand scheme of things. But I thought it was just interesting Miami bringing this guy on and deciding to part ways with Gabe Madsen. Now, I'm not saying Madsen made any, major moves, at least in the preseason, or showed anything really on the court to kind of make his case for Miami to want to stick around. But I definitely think this move kind of was a little bit of a warranted move, considering that Miami's still looking to kind of fulfill more bigger framed players that could potentially develop, at least in the long haul. At least right now, it seems like Settle is going to settle in for Miami's G League team at this point in time, hopefully potentially being a roster add-on at least in some point in the future, maybe potentially later this year, if not next year. But it seems like he's at least Miami was entertaining the idea of keeping him around, especially on an Exhibition 10 deal, to try to develop a little bit more with the G League affiliate Sioux Falls Skyforce. Settle even said, after signing this deal, quote, "The opportunity to be a small piece of such a storied organization is something I don't take for granted. I think my skill set as a taller, versatile wing is something that can and has benefited greatly from my time with the Heat so far. I'm nowhere near a finished product, but I'm so encouraged by how much I've grown as a player in just a few short months. This is just the beginning for me, and I'm looking forward to my continued development in the G League with the Sioux Falls Skyforce. I cannot wait to see what the future holds." And like I've said before on this channel, and as many Heat fans know, Miami has a very good idea of finding diamonds in the rough that develop over a long period of time and really end up starting off as rotational guys that can end up developing as, solid foundational pieces that can really contribute, whether it's in the starting lineup or a guy coming off the bench. And I think they definitely see this in Steve Settle right now. And that's why I think they're kind of at least trying to let his game marinate a little bit in the G League, although we didn't really see that in the summer league. He was pretty much non-existent, shooting very poorly, averaging only about 2 points per game in, I believe, 5 contests. So only time will kind of tell to see if he ends up being a piece that could potentially fit in somewhere in Miami's rotation. But I definitely think he is the promise given his tenure with Temple, and hopefully that will kind of carry over at least into his time with the Sioux Falls Skyforce, being going as an undrafted free agent in this year's draft. I'm hopeful that he could definitely be a solid piece for Miami, at least in the foreseeable future. And now coming up, the regular season right around the corner. It's going to be kicking off on October 22nd. It's almost here. And Miami, as I've mentioned before, they're going to be opening their regular season against the Orlando Magic. But before that, they've got their last preseason game with Memphis today at 8 o'clock tonight. Hopefully, Miami won't go winless in the preseason at 0-6. But again, it really doesn't matter if they do. But it'd be nice to see them at least pick up one preseason win, given how the team has kind of at least been working through some of these games, and some of these losses just been really tough, especially that overtime loss to Atlanta on Monday was just a really tough break, I feel like, for this team. So, again, would be nice to see Miami at least get one preseason win, but if not, things will kick off with the Orlando Magic on the road, followed by another road matchup with the Memphis Grizzlies. After that, then Miami kicking off their home opener against the Knicks on Sunday, October 26th. And I'm very excited for that because I'm originally from New York, grew up in New York City. So I know my friends are definitely going to be excited to maybe flaunt some bragging rights if New York commandedly beats Miami, at least in this game. I know over the last 15 years that necessarily hasn't been the case. And some of the trips have been able to go to the Garden and watch Miami play. Most of them they've been able to win, at least from my past memory. So I'm hoping that my friends from home don't have the bragging rights in that regard. But after that home opener on the 26th, they have another home game against the Charlotte Hornets, followed by a road trip to San Antonio on the 30th. Now, out of these 5 games, I'm hoping at the very least Miami can at least pick up the win against Charlotte, because that one on paper, in my opinion, should really be an easy win. The Knicks are definitely going to be a tough matchup. The game against Memphis would kind of be a toss-up, seeing how this Grizzly team kind of shapes up without Desmond Bane. But at least that home game against Orlando, at least the first matchup on the road against the Magic is going to be an interesting game to see as well. I think this Magic team definitely has a solid case to make an Eastern Conference Finals run. Them, the Pistons, and the Knicks, I really think have the best chance at winning the conference championship at this point in time, given the Achilles situation with Tatum and Halliburton, at least on the Celtics and Pacers respectively. So I'm curious to see how those teams, or at least how the Magic is going to stack up against Miami in their home opener. And then obviously this game with the Spurs. It's always exciting to see Wembanyama face off, and I'm really curious to see how Bam and Kel'el Ware are going to try and contain Wembanyama in this matchup. But we'll just kind of have to wait and see. I'm very excited. I can't believe the regular season's almost here. But drop in the comments where you think Miami is going to finish through these first 5 games. If they'll go 1-4, I'm hoping that it'll be more of like they'll pick up at least 2 or 3 wins out of this first 5 game stretch through October, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But that's going to do it for this Friday's episode of your Heat Latest here on FanArc. Don't forget to drop a like on this video, and of course subscribe to our channel for great daily content, all pertaining to your Miami Heat right here, Monday through Friday. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Sam Shapiro. Have a great weekend.